Well, I'd like to share with you my experience of having my daughter diagnosed with restrictive cardiomyopathy, which is a very rare heart condition. And the process of that diagnosis took actually about 3 years, so quite a long time. She presented with some symptoms about age 7 of some respiratory issues like shortness of breath and fatigue when she did exercise, even when she'd walk to school and have to stop and catch her breath, which didn't feel right. So we pretty much went down a path of having her diagnosed with asthma, and 2 years later had a diagnosis of exercise-induced asthma, which ticked all the boxes and satisfied our concerns, until one day when she walked up a hill and her lips went blue, and we kind of realised that we were dealing with something else. So went on the hunt for the best paediatric cardiologist in Perth, and that's where we are now. At the time, my feelings were I was very focused on finding the best person to help us. That gave me something to do, which was good. But then when he called and said that the results of the many tests that we'd had did actually confirm that there was some abnormality with her heart muscle, the feelings were really mixed. There was a bit of a relief that we finally had some answers to this 3-year problem. There was some guilt that I wish I had done something about this before and had got on the right path earlier. Mostly a lot of confusion about what it meant and where to look and how to try and find the right answers and the right information. An incredible lack of control at not being able to fix it, at not being able to go out and buy medicine that she could take to make it better, and at not being able to make her better and make the future safe for her. So lots of fear as well, and also a lot of trust in one person who we put all our faith in and all our trust in to give us the answers. And 10 months later we had our diagnosis of restrictive cardiomyopathy, and Sophie was 10 years old then. The main challenge that I came across when I first got that diagnosis was how to not Dr. Google, which of course I did, and saw some pretty scary words on there like heart failure and sudden death and mortality rates. And it was really difficult to not read everything that I read and take that on board. So I made a decision very early that I needed to stay positive and not rely on that information and to get some better information. The other challenge was not to wrap her up in cotton wool, which was probably the hardest thing to do, to not keep her home and keep her safe with me and keep her out of my direct line of vision. The other challenge then became that I became an advocate for her, meaning that I had to put my foot down when I didn't have the answers that I wanted to and challenge doctors on giving me other information and more tests, and also to be an advocate for her at school, for people to not allow her to be in a situation where she wasn't safe, like doing sport, things like that. It certainly changed me by making me very much stronger, and also made me look at big picture and say a lot of the times to myself that what is the problem with this in the scheme of things, like the wanting to do something, eating too many Zupa Dupas, and having to sit back and say, in this big scheme of things, that's okay, let her do those things, it's not going to hurt. So that's how it changed me. Probably the main things that I could think of that the experience has taught me is firstly to listen to my gut. And the best example I can give is that I remember thinking so many times that it just wasn't right that a young, fit, healthy girl could have so much trouble with shortness of breath after walking up a hill or running around. And my feeling then now is that if something doesn't feel right, then it probably isn't, and that it's absolutely right to assume that that is not okay. The other thing it's taught me is that it is okay to seek the best person in the field, or whatever field anyone's looking for, because when a condition or a disease is very rare and nobody knows much about it, you need to have the best people out batting for you, and that usually people have a good reputation for a reason, and they're the people that you want working with for your child. And lastly, the other thing is that it did teach me that things can present in different ways. So for so many months and years, we assumed that there was something wrong with her lungs because she couldn't breathe, and in fact it ended up being her heart. So if something looks wrong in one part of your body, not necessary to assume that that's where the issue is, that it could be anything else, and not just stay focused on one area when it could be something else, to look wider. The parting message that I would like to give to people if they find themselves in the situation I've been in would be, firstly, to accept help, to not try and be a martyr and to do things on your own or find things out on your own. It's very easy to be proud and say, I can do this on my own, but sometimes you do need people to help you. Another thing that we have had to learn very quickly is to live normally and not let the problem, the condition or the illness define who we are as a family, to continue living as we normally do and doing the things we normally do, because there's other people in the family who don't have that condition. And lastly, I would like to say that I've learnt that it's really important to look after myself. So I've worked out that I can't help Sophie if I'm not fully in a good place and at good capacity in my health and fitness. So I'm trying my best to keep myself fit and healthy so that I can be there when she needs me to and be 100% on board for her.